We are back with another Hagrid's Garden video. This time, I made a video specifically for my friend Ellie. Hi, Ellie. We met in law school. We graduated 20 years ago, a couple weeks ago. So, hi, Ellie. She requested a video about roses because she knows how much I love them. So today we're going to talk about everything you need to know about growing roses. Roses are not for the faint-hearted. A lot of times people will ask me gardening questions about what they should do with their garden, and I try to talk them through what kind of garden they want. And a lot of that involves how much work you're willing to put into it. I have probably more than a dozen roses in my garden. A lot of my garden is pretty self-sustaining, but the roses are one thing that do take a lot of work. So if you're looking at adding roses to your garden, keep that in mind. It's also one area where I suggest you take time and do research. It is very, very important that you choose a high quality and disease-resistant rose that does well with both your cold hardiness zone and also your climate. Damp climates can often cause fungus problems in roses, so it's not a good idea to go to your favorite garden store and just randomly start picking up roses because you like the color. It's better to start at home, do your research, not only on what kind of rose you want, but whether it's going to do well in your region. We're going to start by talking about the different kinds of roses that you can select. So if you haven't yet chosen your rose or don't have a garden full of roses, this will be helpful. Unfortunately, I don't have every kind of rose in my garden, so we're going to talk about a few. You can see photos on the slide, but it may not be a kind of rose that I have in my garden. The first kind of rose is your hybrid tea rose. This is probably the most popular variety of rose. It is the kind of rose that when you get cut flowers, it's the long stem with one single beautiful rose on top. There are a ton of colors and varieties of hybrid tea roses. Again, you want to make sure when you're choosing one that you're choosing one that will do well in your area. But again, these are the most popular kind of rose. They're tall and they're beautiful and they make really great cut flowers. Next up, we have a Floribunda Rose. These bloom continuously, so they're a great choice for the garden. But instead of one long stem with one flower on top, you're going to find clusters of flowers and not such a long stem. So you can still use them as cut flowers, but you're not going to have the same look as in terms of a long, thin rose. Again, you can find some great disease-resistant varieties and a lot of color options. This rose right here is called South Africa. It's a Grandiflora Rose. It also has a cluster of blooms. A lot of varieties. This color right here is one of my favorite colors. As you can see, it's got a sort of a tangerine color with red and dark orange tips on the end. Again, these usually have large, beautiful blossoms. And in this particular case, it's got lots of beautiful layered blooms. A lot of my roses are shrub roses. I got a rose disease a couple of years ago in my garden called rose rosette. And it unfortunately is a fungus that gets into the soil. And so at that point, I removed all of the roses on this hill. And you can see that all my roses are in pots. And I did a lot of research before I chose the roses and picked shrub varieties that were more disease resistant. This is called a Vanessa bell rose. These tend to be sprawling and hardy. I do have to spend a decent amount of time making sure that I keep them formed so they don't get too heavy and fall over. But again, it's a really great, a lot of selection in terms of color and variety. Another great choice is a climbing rose. If you have a trellis that you're looking to fill, a climbing rose is a really great choice. Again, it takes a lot of work. You need to train them to go up the trellis and keep them trimmed. But you can have, again, lots of beautiful color, and it provides a great backdrop in your garden. So when you choose what kind of rose you want to purchase, you can often get them two ways. Usually early in late winter, early spring, you can buy them bare root. It literally comes without any soil. You soak the root system, and then you plant it. You can see the instructions for planting as part of the slide. You want to dig a hole and then create a mound in the middle and set the root system over it. And make sure that you bury it, but not too deeply. The other way is to buy it at the store with a full clump of dirt, and then you plant it as you would most plants that you get at the store that have a good root system. Make sure you have an area that has enough sunlight because roses require a lot of sun, and well-drained soil. The roots don't like to stay wet and damp. I said that roses can be quite a bit of work. There are many types of pests and diseases that you have to worry about in roses. The most common are fungus, the black spot and powdery mildew. you'll notice that even though I take pretty good care of my roses, if you zoom in, you can see black spot. And what you do in this case is if you have a limb that has a lot of black spot like this does, the best thing to do is to remove it. There are some natural options, but removing it is the very first step. And then you can treat it with a liquid fungicide. That will not cure the plant, but it will keep any of your beautiful new leaves from getting the fungus. So sometimes, particularly in our wet climate, I do have to treat it with a fungicide. You will also notice sometimes you'll get leaves where it looks like someone is attacking it. Sometimes it's slugs and sometimes it's other pests. Often you'll see aphids, slugs, and other pests. So for slugs, I usually use beer traps. A very simple, put some very, very inexpensive beer in a container on the ground. The slugs will be attracted to that and unfortunately will no longer be a problem for your roses. There are chemical treatments that you can use. The very best thing that you can do is keep beneficial bugs like ladybugs. Invite them as often as you can into your garden because they will eat the bad bugs. And in addition, it's to keep a healthy plant. If you have a healthy plant, it is less likely to get attacked by the bugs. There are harsher chemicals that you can use if things have gotten dire, but often you can actually just spray aphids to remove them and then try to keep the plant healthy. Ellie specifically requested information about pruning roses, and I'll be honest, I prune my roses every year and I don't do it harshly enough because I'm afraid of hurting it. But you actually want to strongly prune your roses depending on your area. I usually come out in February and you want to cut them way back. I have included a couple of pictures because I can't clearly do that right now. The roses are in bloom, about how exactly you want to prune your rose. If you prune your rose at that time of year, you're going to create a healthy rose bush with healthy growth patterns. So follow those instructions for your winter pruning, removing any diseased limbs, cutting it down, and also of course making sure that you leave really great aeration, so taking out some of the middle so that it can make sure that when the wind blows it's drying out. That will help you keep getting fungus later on. What you do in the summer is you want to keep your plant happy. So you're not going to be cutting it off in any sort of severe method, but you are going to want to be taking care of your roses in the summer. The very easiest thing that you can do is deadheading the rose. So after a rose is finished blooming and is completely done, you want to go ahead and cut it off. It's still trying to support that bud even though the bud is done. So anything that you can remove, it's one less thing the plant has to worry about. This time of year, I'm gonna have Dave follow me. You also wanna make sure that if you miss any suckers are things that grow from the base of the plant, and they usually end up looking like this, and they can flower, but they're awkward and you wanna remove them because the plant's putting more energy than it needs to in the suckers. And then again, we talked about disease. So if you have a limb, let me find one that has a lot of disease, even in the summer, you wanna make sure that you're removing it so that you can clean the plant up without a lot of harsh chemicals. So for example, if I just have a few black spots, I might not want to worry about it. But for example, if you look in here, you'll see that this limb isn't looking very happy. Now the instructions for how you want to cut a limb off are in that picture that's included, because there are some specific ways. You will not kill the plant if you cut it in the wrong place, but this allows the way that you cut it to be the best for the plant and for it to heal very quickly. Also, always make sure that when you're using your pruners, you start with clean pruners. You want to soak them in bleach or another chemical. The disease I got was most likely spread because I cut something that had the disease, and then I went straight to cutting another plant. So it's really important to very often make sure that you're using clean shears so that you're not spreading disease between your plants. So we talk about the best way to keep your roses happy is to remove anything that's causing a problem and to clean it up. Make sure also that you're cleaning around the base of the plant where the leaves have fallen. A lot of time you'll find those were diseased leaves that maybe have fungus on it. You don't want the fungus to splash when it rains or gets watered back up onto your plant. So try to keep the area around the rose bush clean. And then what you want to do is you want to keep him happy. The roses need fertilizer. So usually in this early spring, you can start with a fertilizer. My favorite place to get roses is called Heirloom Roses, and they recommend that for the first year you only use a liquid fertilizer on your rose bushes. It's less harsh for the plant. It is more work for you, but the plant will be happier. So I use a basic liquid fish fertilizer. I put it in my watering can, and I use the instructions on the back, and I actually hand watered all these roses for the first year. After the first year, I got lazy, and there's a lot of organic rose food that you can use that's granular, and then you don't have to worry about feeding it quite as often, but you want to make sure you feed it through the entire blooming season. Again, if there's not enough nutrition in the soil, your rose isn't going to be happy. There are wonderful local rose societies that you can look up for your area that will have a great list of recommendations. There are a lot of specialty English roses. I'm a fan of David Austin roses. They're a beautiful, fragrant heirloom varieties as well. So you can, pick based on whether you want fragrance, whether you're looking for color, and make sure, again, that you're looking for the things that do well locally. So roses are a fair amount of work, but what you get is a full summer of beautiful blooms. There's a lot of tricks. I'm honestly not the world's greatest flower decorator. This is a rose that I cut from the garden a few minutes ago, combined with some sage and some other perennials. So, I honestly think that they're worth the work. You'll have to decide if they are for yourself. I always try to include an experiment in our videos. So what I did this time, I asked that you find one white or light colored rose if you'd like to do the experiment, some food coloring, and some water. And what we did, Thorin and I put the rose in water with some green food coloring in one jar, some blue food coloring in another jar, and then teal in the third jar. You can see that we only had a couple of colors of food coloring available to us. And then we actually charted over a period of 24 hours to see if we could change the color of the rose. What do you think happens? How long does it take? And why in the world would that even work? All right, what's up next? We'll probably be trying to do a few more videos this summer. I plan to try to do one on pollinators like hummingbirds and bees and butterflies. But what would you like to learn about? Again, this video came to you because my friend Ellie requested it, so make sure you let me know if there's something you'd like to learn about in Hagrid's garden.